The following is from day 3 of learning Italian and deals mainly with verbs. It's just raw footage. It's meant to document the process of learning Italian. I hope you enjoy it. I hope future me enjoys it too. All right. Why I sometimes use secondary sources as well as grammar books when learning languages. I'm currently looking at Wikipedia articles, word lists, and so on. Why? Number one, because learning a language is not quite the same as learning the grammar. With everything, there are wholes, the whole, and parts. What grammars do well is to concentrate on the parts. I'm not sure that they generally do a good job of emphasizing the wholeness. The oneness, they do badly, in my experience, but the manyness they do well. So, having studied French a little bit and having studied Spanish a little bit, I know, for example, that there are 3 conjugations in Italian, there are 3 conjugations in Spanish, and 4 conjugations in French. And these conjugations, these infinitive verb endings, dictate behavior of formation of verbs generally. For example, the present participle, the past participle, and other matters. So having the oneness, having an overview under which you can arrange your knowledge is equally useful, and it's a necessary counterpart to learning using the part method. And I think that's one thing that puts folks off learning grammar and puts folks off learning language in general, that there is some imbalance between the oneness of language and the manyness of language. How viewing languages a certain way either accelerates or puts the brakes on your language acquisition. If you view languages as bags of vocabulary, huge, great bags of vocabulary to be learned, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 flashcards at a time, then you're going to have a very difficult time learning the language. However, since languages were intelligently constructed, first of all by God himself, and then over the course of history, according to established principles, we know that languages have an internal logic, and furthermore, because we know about the origins of languages, that language families of languages are particularly similar to one another. Moving from French to Spanish to Italian, you notice, for example, that they just look the same and sometimes sound the same, and they follow similar principles, similar patterns for forming persons, and past participles, present participles, etc. So if you go into learning a language with the right attitude, an attitude which corresponds to the reality that languages were specially created, as it were, and then speciated, and therefore have an internal logic, you're going to effectively be able to look for and find logical, rational patterns, which you can then exploit to unlock great swathes of verbs which would otherwise have had to have been memorized painstakingly, person by person, tense by tense, mood by mood. So our vision of what language is does matter. The 3 groups of verbs in Italian and how they will help us master Italian verbs. There are 3 groups of verbs in Italian: verbs ending are, verbs ending in ere, and verbs ending in ire. Each of these groups have their own internal logic. Once we learn what the groups are and are able to identify to which group a given verb belongs, we will be able to accelerate our learning, our mastery of Italian verbs exponentially. Why? Because once we learn the patterns for the formation of the present tenses, past tenses, and the future tenses and subjunctive tenses for each of the respective conjugations, we will not only have learnt how to conjugate a given verb in a given conjugation, but we will further be able to conjugate any given verb that falls within the respective each one of the respective three groups. It is given that there are exceptions, but these knowing and identifying these three groups will nevertheless accelerate our learning substantially. But the exceptions tend to be more commonly used verbs, so which are therefore easier to memorize. And also the exceptions, the irregularities, happen within the framework of an overall regularity. So that is why it's important to learn these three conjugations: are, ere, and ire. The pattern for conjugating verbs. Before we go on to the patterns unique to each of the three respective conjugations or groups of verbs in Italian, are, ere, and ire, we must understand that there are three singular persons and three plural persons in Italian. There are more, but we'll look at that later on. For the purposes of conjugation, there are three singular persons and three plural persons. The singular persons equate to I, you, he, she, it, singular, and we, you, they, plural. So, when we go through the different endings for present tense, for the first, second, and third conjugations, for the imperfect, etc., etc., I'm referring to three singular and three plural persons in order. Those persons are I, you, he, she, it, then we, you, they. Italian personal pronouns. The first thing to know about Italian personal pronouns is that they are seldom used. Because Italian is a highly inflected language, meaning that the verb itself changes at the end, indicating the person. We do not need to use the personal pronouns, as we definitely do need to use them in English. In fact, they are really only ever used in Italian for purposes of emphasis. The English personal pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, singular and plural. The Italian personal pronouns are as follows: io, I, tu, second person singular, you, egli, and ella, he, she. It is esso or essa. Note that there are distinct masculine and feminine forms for it: esso and essa. Io, tu, egli, ella, esso, essa. What are the plural forms? They are as follows: noi, we, voi, you plural, essi and esse, masculine and feminine, they. The simple present tense in Italian with the first conjugation, verbs ending in are. How do we form the six persons, I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, in Italian, in the present tense with the group of verbs ending in are. This group behaves in a distinct manner from either verbs ending in ere or verbs ending in ire. Let's take an example, the verb parlare. We form the different persons in the present tense of the verb parlare, to speak. Thus, we remove its distinct ending, are, and add on suffixes, letters or groups of letters, to each of the persons. This is how we do it. Remove are and add o, I, a, or iamo, ate, or ano, respectively. So, for the verb parlare, take away the are, leaves us with parl, the radical or root, to which we add o, parlo, I speak. Parli, you speak. Parla, he, she, it speaks. Parliamo, we speak. Parlate, you plural speak. Or parlano, they speak. Forming the present tense with the second conjugation in Italian, verbs ending ere, ere. How do you form the simple present tense in Italian with the second conjugation verbs ending ere? There are, as with are, two basic steps. For example, with the verb scrivere, to write. Number one, we locate the distinct ending of the verb, ere, verbs ending ere, and remove the ere from scrivere, leaving us scrive. To this root, we will then add the relevant but distinct endings. The endings to the 6 grammatical persons follow. O, I, e, iamo, ete, ono. That's O, I for I, e for I. Iamo, I-A-M-O, ete, E-T-E, and ono. So, for the verb scrivere, scrivo, I write, scrivi, you write, scrive, he, she, it writes, scriviamo, we write, scrivete, you plural write, and scrivono, they write. How do we form the simple present tense in Italian with the third conjugation, verbs ending ire? First of all, let's take an example with the verb partire. Let's remove its distinct ending, partire, ire, which leaves us with part, P-A-R-T. Then we add the respective endings unique to this conjugation. O, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. That would give us parto, I leave, parti, you leave, singular, parte, he, she, it leaves, partiamo, we leave, partite, you plural leave, or partono, they leave. Now we know how to conjugate the vast majority of verbs, not the irregular verbs, the vast majority of verbs in Italian in the simple present tense, all by learning, let's call it 21 individual things. For the sake of comparison, let's look at the respective endings for the first, second, and third conjugations in Italian, verbs ending are, ere, and ire. Verbs ending are end, respectively, in o, I, a, iamo, ate, ono. Verbs ending in ere, second conjugation, end in o, I, e, amo, ete, ono. Verbs ending ire, the third conjugation, end respectively in o, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. This will help illustrate the slight but distinct differences and commonalities between the 3 groups of verbs in the present tense. So let's move on to other tenses straight away. How do we form the imperfect tense in Italian? To form the imperfect tense in Italian, we remove the distinctive endings of the respective verbs in each conjugation, are, ere, or ire. Then we add a particular letter, the first letter of the are, e, ere, I, or ire, e, followed by vo, vi, va, singular, or vamo, vate, vano, plural. So, to form an imperfect tense in Italian, in the first conjugation, are, we would remove are, note that are begins with a, and add the suffix. Avo, avi, ava, avamo, avate, avano. To form the imperfect tense in the second conjugation, we would remove the distinctive ending, ere. Note that ere begins with e, the letter e, and then add the respective suffixes, evi, evo, even, evo, evi, eva, first, second, and third person singular, evamo, evate, evano, plural. How do we form the imperfect tense in the third conjugation in Italian? First of all, we remove the distinctive ending, ire. Note that ire begins with the letter I, and then add the fixed suffixes after that, giving us ivo, iva, ivi, iva, that's ivo, ivi, iva, ivamo, ivate, and Ivano. How do we form the future simple, the il futuro semplice, in Italian? Answer, we identify and then remove the particular endings, are, ere, and ire, and then add a particular suffix. There are two sets of suffixes to be added. The first group of suffixes are to be added to the are and ire verbs. That is, namely, ero, erai, era, eremo, erete, erano. These can be added to verbs ending are or verbs ending in ere. These all start with the letter E, ero, erai, era, for example. So we change the initial letter E in English to the letter I, giving us iro, irai, ira, iremo, irete, irano. So, for example, finirò, finirai, finirà, finiremo, finirete, finirano. That is how we form the future simple in all regular verbs in Italian. How do you form the conditional in Italian? The conditional is the verb in English would go, would do, would have. You must, first of all, start with the infinitive, that is the verbs ending are, ere, or ire, and then remove the respective endings and add the appropriate suffixes. Those suffixes are arranged into two possible groups, those ending, those to do with are and ere, and those to do with ire. First of all, are and ere. Remove the respective endings and add the following suffixes to the 6 grammatical persons. Erei, E-R-E-I, ereste, eresti, E-R-E-S-T-I, erei, eresti, erebe, erebbe, E-R-E-B-B-E, E-R-E-B-B-E, erebbe, singular and plural, eremmo, ereste, and erebbero. So, to recap, for are and ere verbs, we add the following endings to the 6 grammatical persons. Erai, eresti, erebbe, eremmo, ereste, erebbero. Now, all of those start with the letter E. To get the appropriate endings for the ire verbs, we remove the ire and replace the E of the initial E of the suffix with the letter I to get irei, iresti, irebbe, iremmo, ireste, irebbero. So, to form the conditional, we remove the appropriate endings of the infinitive verbs and add rei, resti, rebe, remo, reste, rebero, preceded by the letter E with are and ere verbs, and the letter I with ire verbs. Language learning by induction or deduction. So, I'm reading this off the screen. Deduction is the inference of particular instances by reference to a general law. So you go from the general law to the particular instances, whereas induction in logic is the inference of a general law from particular instances. Now, why introduce this in relation to language learning? The answer will become clear. I'm no expert in logic, but I do know a little bit about learning languages. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that logically speaking, there are two general ways. These are not mutually exclusive, of course, but language learning can be more to one side or to the other. What do I mean by induction and deduction as they relate to language learning? Well, we can expose ourselves to a mass of data, and through context clues, through what we know about a related language, through some sort of a language partner, piece by piece, you can piece together the language. Maybe even you have to figure out how to write it down. So you go from the general instances, a huge mass of general instances, and you go to develop laws from those general instances. That's one way. The other way is you learn the laws of the language in this case, and you take each instance, which may be considered a word or a phrase, a clause, whatever, a sentence, a paragraph, and you sort that, you triage that, you divide that up in your brain, or maybe in your notebook or whatever, in according to that law schema. Again, what does that have to do with languages? Well, this is to do with, let's call it linguistics, and I'm no expert in linguistics, versus just being there in the language, being there in the country where they speak the language. It's often said that the best way to learn a language is by living in a country where they speak that language. And that is right, but it's also absolutely useless and nonsense. All right, I'm being unfair, of course, but if you want to learn a language in a hurry, you cannot afford to immerse yourself in a country and work out the grammar from the massive data coming in. You don't have the time for that. You can't afford to give that up for whatever reason. If you're a child, you will, following that procedure, almost without any effort on your part, pick up the language, talk like a native, intone like a native. Everything will be perfect, but adults don't have the same opportunities as children. So, if you want to learn the language, you must, at some level and in some way, learn, let's call it the grammar. You must, and other aspects of linguistics, the writing system, figure out how it's written down and be able to write it itself. figure out the sound system, the phonology, how the orthography of a language, how the writing system of a language relates to the pronunciation system, how the, as I say, the grammar works. Either you learn that explicitly and perhaps painfully for an hour or 5 minutes or however long, or you have to work it all out yourself with little dribs and drabs of pain, which for many of us puts language learning outside of the realm of possibility. So all I'm saying is that for effective, accelerated language learning, you must consider being brave and learning the language. You don't have to learn it as a grammarian would, and I'm no grammarian, but you have to, at some level, be able to recognize, for example, a conditional or a present subjunctive, recognize it, recognize what person it's in, and be able to express, to produce that, know when it should be used, use it appropriately in the respective persons, and so on. So, lots of pain all at once, let's put it that way, unless you enjoy grammar, or lots of little drops of pain over an impractically long level. Those are the two ways. How do we form the present perfect in Italian? The present perfect in English goes something like this. I have gone. We have done. There's two parts. There's the we have or I have, and then we have the past participle, done or gone. So, to form the present perfect in Italian, we need to know how to do two distinct things. Number one, how to conjugate the verb avere, the auxiliary verb have, in Italian, in the present tense, and then how to form the past participle from the infinitive of the verb we're working with. So, how is avere conjugated in the present tense? As follows. Ho, hai, ha, abbiamo, avete, hanno. Okay, that's the first half. What about the second half? How do we form the past participle, the equivalent of gone or done, in Italian? Well, there's a distinct method for each of the three conjugations, are, ere, and ire. For verbs ending are, such as amare, we take away the are, leaving us with am in this case, and then adding ato. Amato, I have loved, ho amato. For verbs ending ere, for example, credere, we remove the ere and add uto. We have believed, abbiamo creduto. For verbs ending ire, for example, partire, to leave, the ire is replaced with ito. For example, hai partito. You have left. These are the two things that we need to do to form the present perfect in Italian. Just to remind you, the relevant endings for are, ere, and ire are ato, uto, and ito. The present perfect too. How do you form verbs of coming and going, like to come or to go, in Italian, in the present perfect? Verbs of coming and going must be conjugated not with the verb avere, to have, but with essere, to be. How do you conjugate essere, to be, in Italian? Okay, it is conjugated as follows. Sono, sei, siamo, siete, sono. There is a second difference between forming the present perfect with avere, and forming the present perfect with the verb to be, essere, and that is as follows. When forming the present perfect with the verb essere, the past participle must agree with the subject in both gender and number. Now, all the past participles end in to, in the letter O. In the singular, the O becomes a when it's feminine, and the O becomes I when it's masculine plural, and E when it's feminine plural. So, with certain verbs, verbs of coming and going, they are conjugated with the verb essere, which forces us to make the past participle agree with the subject in both gender and number. How to form the past perfect in Italian. We know how to form the present perfect, and the past perfect only differs from the present perfect in one respect. In the present perfect, we must conjugate avere in the simple present tense. However, to form the past perfect, we must form avere, conjugate avere, in the imperfect tense. We have covered the imperfect already, so we already know how to do it. Avere is conjugated as follows. Vo, vi, va, vamo, vate, van are the suffix, with e being placed before the suffix, leaving us with aveva, avevi, aveva, avevamos, avevamos, avevate, avevano. To this, we add the past participles formed as before. The past perfect to, forming the past perfect with intransitive verbs or verbs with coming and going. We have seen that there is an exception in the present perfect for verbs of coming and going. They are not conjugated with avere, but rather with essere. The same is true with the past perfect. For verbs of coming and going, we must conjugate essere in the imperfect tense. Now, essere is an irregular verb, so its conjugation is rather more difficult, but far from impossible. It is conjugated as follows. Ero, eri, era, eravamo, eravate, erano. Again. Ero, era, ero, eri, era, eravamo, eravate, erano. The same holds true as with the exception to the present perfect, in that the past participle must agree with the subject in both gender and number, so the O at the end of the past participle must be modified accordingly to become a, feminine singular, I, masculine plural, or e, masculine plural.